Good morning everyone. One of the biggest and most difficult thing in photography is to succeed taking your photo. There's tons of reasons why you may fail your shot, and today I want to share with you the main ones and how you can fix them. So take this video as a long and detailed troubleshooting videos for failed photos. If you're ready, let's get started. Alright guys, welcome to Nepal. People are so friendly here, you gotta have a big smile on your face. Okay. Why do we fail our photos? There's a lot of reasons possible, and I've probably done all those reasons. And I want to focus on 3 in this video. Why we fail and how we can fix it. You know, like how we can improve it. Sometimes our photos are blurry, sometimes our subject is blurry, sometimes it's like shaky, sometimes the settings are off, and sometimes we just don't know what we're doing, honestly. So, after the next scooter, you'll know more. Oh, that was a motorcycle. Okay, so let me know in the comments right now which camera you shoot, how many photos do you think you fail per year or per day you go shoot, and what is your name? My name is Pierre Thielander. I'm a travel adventure photographer and the creator of the 30-day Adventure to Great Photos, a step-by-step method to taking your photography to the next level. We're working on deep skill, what's happening in your brain, with a really dedicated structure to learning how to train your brain to visualize, see, and capture great photos no matter what kind of camera you're using. After years of having the program, it has worked for thousands of students, and I invite you to join the next session with the link in the description. With that being said, let's get started right now. The first reason we fail our photos is simply not being ready. You see all those guys passing by, being super loud, making it that we may have to cut the videos a few times. Well, let's say there was something really epic I wanted to shoot. If I'm not ready with my camera, if my camera is not ready, if it's in the wrong settings, if it's at 70mm and I'm here, I'm gonna fail my shot. And this could have been an amazing photo, a very candid moment, and you missed it. So what can we do? Your lens, put it always on the widest whenever you're leaving a location. So if you're on 24-70, put it back to 24mm, block it there, okay? Then, what camera mode to use? Go in aperture priority. This is gonna save you, okay? We'll talk more in depth about focus and settings and stuff after, in second part and third part, but aperture priority will save your butt so many times. You go back there, you set a minimum shutter speed that will tell your camera don't go below a certain speed. That will depend on the scene, where you are, what time of the day it is, and second of all, leave your ISO in auto. In aperture priority mode, you can only choose your aperture and your ISO. Okay, that's what you can control. You can control your white balance also. Leave that one in auto. Honestly, it will make your life easier. But your aperture controls the depth of field. And in most photos, this is kind of the creative aspect that we want to control in our photos. So just go there, put it to f2.8 or f4. Or if you know you're in a situation where you may miss even more shots, well, put it to f8 and leave it there. So that even if you go like this and the shot is a little weird, you have so much depth of field that you will get the shot correct. So this is for the first part. If you're not ready, this will really help you. So with that being said, I think we can go on to the second part, which might be the most complex, but don't worry, we'll get through it together. All right, get ready. Second reasons why we may fail our shots a lot is gonna be having the wrong settings dialed in, okay? I talked about not being fast enough, etc., but you can be fast enough but still have the wrong settings dialed in. So there's a few things to know. Most of the people I know that fail photos, usually it's because the cameras are shooting with a shutter speed that's a little too slow. So then their subject is blurry, and unless it's intentional, which I love to do, you know, like 1/13 of a second, like a little bit blurry movement, adds a lot of motion in the photo and gives you that feeling of like something happening, great. But if it's not intentional, well, listen up. First of all, you gotta analyze the scene. Do you have someone who is walking fast, walking slow, static, running, flying by? Depending on those, you're gonna be using different shutter speeds, okay? So whether you're shooting in aperture priority, in shutter speed priority, or in manual, you wanna set either your minimum shutter speed or your shutter speed just simply to those values minimum. If your subject is static, you can go anywhere between 1/10 of a second to 1/50th, depending on your focal length and if your sensor is stabilized. If it's stabilized, you can even go to 1/5. Now, if it's slow moving, my recommendation is usually 1/80th, 125th of a second. Let's say someone's walking by, just like it's gonna happen in about 2 seconds. 1, 2, is it in frame? 3, 4, now it's in frame. That would be great at 100th of a second. because that person's not moving that fast. And now if it's faster moving, maybe the subject is about to run or moving really much faster, or maybe dancing, I would say starting from 1/250 of a second and going up from there. 1/500, 1000, and maybe it's a bird flying through 1000 and up. Definitely you want to nail that shot. You want to freeze the action. Sometimes you have to go to 1/3000th of a second. But honestly, for everyday situations, those very high shutter speeds are not something I use very often. Okay, so these shutter speeds should help you fix a blurry subject in your images. Now, what about subjects that were sharp, but the image was like completely overexposed or underexposed? What happens then? How do you fix that? Well, I've done that mistake so many times. There's two things you want to know. That in photography, you want to expose not for the subject you have in your image, but for the creative outcome you are looking for. What does that mean? If I'm shooting and I want a silhouette in my image, I need to expose for my background, right? And so here, if I'm in aperture priority, I can simply use the exposure compensation, which I do all the time. That's one trick, super easy, exposure compensation wheel, plus, -2, until I have the result I want, meaning I have a silhouette. And at any point you can take a photo, look at it, and then change your settings. Remember, life isn't decisive like that. You can always change, right? Now, the other hack you can use is simply to use the AEL button. AEL stands for auto exposure lock. So let's say we're taking a photo of that street right here. Now, if I'm like aiming towards the middle, the camera is gonna try to find something balanced, right? But this may be too dark for the street and for what I want in my shot, or it's maybe too bright because it's exposing for the background. So I can just like go up and then press AEL, and now it has exposed for the sky, and now I can actually take my photo, focus like I want, and take that image. This AEL button is great. So you can use the sky, or you can actually do the contrary and you put it down. That way you measure the light for the bottom part of the image, and when you're gonna take your photo, it's gonna be perfectly exposed for the subject that is in the shadow. You know what? This is a great hack, and a lot of people forget to use it. Even me, for years, so for some reason I was forgetting about it. Now, if you wanna make it even easier, the AEL button, set it to switch and not hold. If you are using hold, you'll have to hold that button the whole time you want to measure the light to keep in memory that new exposure. But if you press it to toggle, actually it's not hold, it's toggle. Whenever you press on it, it's gonna toggle basically that memory of the exposure. So you can expose for the sky, and then you can recompose while releasing the button at any point, and it will keep that in memory until you press that magic button again. Super, super, super cool thing that most of us forget. I know it's a lot. I really hope you've been taking notes, because there's a lot more coming. Now, if you're in situations where you miss your shots because your settings are not adapting fast enough to situations. Let's say you were taking slow shutter speed photos, but the next shot you actually want to freeze the action with a person, and you're like wheeling down and trying to get your shutter speed to the right level, etc. Well, I got another trick for you. Simply go from manual to aperture priority and set the manual to the shot you would like to get creatively. Let's say you want to get a slow shutter speed shot of people moving in the streets, like let's say 1/5 of a second. Okay, set all your settings in the M mode, right there in the manual mode for that. Maybe leave your ISO in auto. But now, when you're done with that shot, let's say you see a cool situation you want to freeze, you simply switch to aperture priority, and now that shutter speed is gonna fly off the window and go to your minimum shutter speed or above, depending on what the situation is, and you'll get your shot. I literally was playing with that yesterday. I wanted to make a whole video about it because I believe that being able to switch fast and being very adaptive in how you shoot will help you get the most diverse set of images, and that way tell a better story. Okay, I hope that made sense. Remember your settings, go back to that section, play it again, slow motion if you need to, but really try those settings and experiment, experiment, experiment. Now, there's another reasons your photo may be missed, and that one is also a big one, so if you're ready, let's go somewhere else for that. Woo. This place is so cute. I just took the portrait of some guys that were hanging around here. It's pretty awesome. They were super friendly. They asked if we wanted to go play football, but I'm terrible at football. So, third reason why we're failing our photos is simply missing the focus. And this is a big topic. If you've seen any video about sharp focus or like sharp images, etc., you want to have the focus that follows and supports your story and the creative ideas that you have. First thing, if your focus is always off and it's very tricky conditions, maybe it's low light and maybe you don't know how to see it, the first thing I suggest doing is going in DMF mode, or simply switching on your lens to manual focus and literally going and doing it manually, especially if your scene is not moving too much. If it's something that you can predict, please use that manual focus. It will save you a lot of times. I've even shot portraits at f1.2, 1.4 with manual focus. You can turn on peaking here in order to have an idea of how the focus is being made, but honestly, manual focus in DMF is usually completely forgotten, but it's highly helpful when you're failing everything else and you don't know why, and the focus is hunting and all your shots are blurred. Now, DMF, what is DMF? DMF is a mode where you can be in autofocus, and whenever you start turning that ring on your focus ring, it's gonna override your autofocus and switch to manual focus. It's a mode that's helpful sometimes, but not always. Sometimes I prefer to be in AFC and just switch my lens to manual focus. Okay, that's for the first technique. The second technique is extremely helpful whenever you have a subject running in a frame and you know the kind of subject it's kind of going to be, or you know your camera well enough that you know it will catch on your subject. So let's say it's a cat running in the frame, or it's a person and you want to have a very specific frame. You know the subject will come from outside the frame, inside the frame. Instead of following him from before into the frame, which usually means your composition is a little bit off, what I suggest is simply going in wide focus mode and waiting for your subject to come. So you go in wide focus area and you press your AF continuous button, the back button focus, for example, and as long as you're pressing, it's gonna try to pick up the subject in your frame, and usually the cameras nowadays will pick up the subject the moment it comes in. It's not always perfect, but it may work, especially if you put human subject detection or animal subject detection, you will kind of catch in focus what you wanted. But if it fails, and your subject is moving parallel to your camera and you know exactly where he's gonna be, just put your manual focus, like I said in first point, exactly where the subject will be, and literally hammer the shutter whenever the subject comes by, and you will have your focus done perfectly. Honestly, sometimes this is even easier. Now, third option, and that's more of in a case you don't know why the focus went on the tree, went on the wooden block, you were trying to use framings in your shot, but somehow the focus was on the frame, on the leaf that you were using instead of your subject. I highly suggest, and that's a mode I use 97% of the time, which is single point focus, okay? And then you move your single point focus wherever you want it, and that's perfect. And now you may be asking, wait, Pierre, you haven't talked about touch focus. There's a reason I haven't touched about it. Not everyone has it, but if you do have it, let's talk about it. Touch point focus will be also very helpful in those situations. If you want to override, for example, a wide focus area, you can just tap on the screen where you want to focus and maybe even go in tracking and photo a subject. Super helpful. I don't use it in all my cameras, even though they have it. Some cameras I find are more responsive and better designed for it than others, and honestly, sometimes I just know exactly how to manipulate the camera. If I don't have the joystick, for example, on the RX1 R2, I would love to be able to tap focus. This just saved my life all the time. But it's not as fast, honestly, as just hammering the AF on button and knowing exactly where your subject is and having a tracking right away. So I hope you've been following, because that was a lot, and I've got a little bonus for you. So if you're ready, let's go for the bonus. Number 4, why do we fail photos? Because simply we forget to review them on location. That happens to me every time I feel rushed, whenever I'm not sure what I'm doing and I forget to review my images. Earlier this morning, we were shooting at a beautiful temple with monkeys and stuff, and I was trying a photo and I had to review my shot because I kept missing it, but I didn't know I missed it until I reviewed it, and then I looked at it and I was like, oh no, my focus is off, this is off, etc. So always review your images on location, especially when they're important shots, and then adapt. If it's settings, change your settings. If it's focus, change your focus. If it's light, exposure, etc., something's not working, try to analyze and change that. Honestly, this is the best advice I can give you, and this is what has worked for me. Now, if you want to go further, please check out the link below. There is a 30-day adventure to great photos starting soon. We're going to be working together over 30 days to really train your eyes to see and capture better photos, no matter what kind of gear you're using. So the setting part is one thing, but there is like composition, light, storytelling. There's so much more that we're gonna dig into. So if you're ready, get out there, go shoot, try something different, try something new. I'll see you in the next episode on the next session.